Thank you very much for joining us today. This is Pass the Cheese. My name is Jackie. With us is Vicky, who I happen to know quite well. We've known each other all my life. It's my older sister.
Hello. Yeah, I got all the secrets.
Yeah, she knows all the good stuff. Yeah, she's going to join us for our conversations today. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate you doing this with me, and we're kind of figuring out this whole thing. Oh, Ellie is here too. Ellie has made an appearance. I've made references to my cat before, but she has always been sleeping during this. So, maybe she'll stop by and say hi. Yeah, she knows Vicky quite well. Vicky and I were actually living together when I got Ellie.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so I guess I'll introduce myself briefly. I am Vicky Rohr. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in California. And I have known Jackie since the day she was born, back in 1990.
Oh, you're telling people my age now.
I'm giving away your secrets. I already told you. You invited me. It's all.
They know my last name. They know the year I was born. Whew.
Sorry, couldn't help it.
It's okay. I've done this to myself.
I am disappointed that she didn't send me over any cheese for this little meeting we're having here.
Well, one day we'll be reunited somehow. What was that?
Said, you know how much I love cheese.
I know. Yeah, we're a big cheese family. Do you have a favorite kind of cheese?
I think maybe goat cheese is my favorite. I find it extremely delicious, and for some reason our father hates it, which is so weird. It's like I can literally eat it on anything.
Camille, when she was living with her family, if she ever didn't want them to eat something, she would put goat cheese on it because none of them liked goat cheese, and I thought that was brilliant.
It was a good strategy.
Yeah, it is funny. So a little bit about our father. He used to be a chef, which is, I feel a little bit bad because both Vicky and I can be picky eaters.
I was the worst.
We have both matured and gotten better about stuff, but there are still several things that we will not eat. And I do feel a little bad that he was a chef and everything he makes is delicious, but there are things that we are very particular on. But to me, it's also very, very funny that he doesn't like goat cheese. Like,
I know. He likes everything, but not that.
But not that. Yeah. And here we are.
I don't know how he dealt with me. I literally ate nothing as a child. It had to be plain, going to Taco Bell and ordering a quesadilla, but they didn't have those, I guess. So it was just trying to explain nothing on it but the cheese and the tortilla.
Yeah, back in the day, they did not have quesadillas. I even wonder if this day, if they have plain quesadillas. I've never gotten one because I've grown out of that stage myself.
Probably on the kids' menu now.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing right now with, your life?
Yeah. Well, it's been a crazy, crazy year, as we all know. And then California has been extra crazy with these ridiculous fires, and basically the apocalypse was last week. But it's finally, the air is clear the last 2 days.
I laugh, but it's not funny,
It's I think you have to laugh so you don't cry.
Yeah. It is a very scary and weird time that we're in so many ways. And I think a lot of people are very scared about a lot of things. And
yeah, well, and so me being a therapist, trying to be there for people and their mental health during these times, it's obviously very difficult for a variety of reasons. And I work with a lot of young people, and just the toll of being stuck at home and not being able to go to school and have that structure and see their friends is really weighing on people right now. And yeah, I mean, I had to adapt in my business where I never thought I would do online therapy, and now, like half of my week is spent doing that. And yeah, I definitely feel like I've been getting more calls lately of people just like looking for therapy, and it's hard to find people these days who are taking clients.
Yeah, mental health is super important, in this time, whatever that looks like, for everyone. I also see a therapist, not Vicky, because that would be inappropriate.
No.
But I've been seeing one for about 2 years, and they're actually they're about to leave for maternity leave, and so we have discussed, what that would look like for me with that, because part of it is made a little bit complicated. I am on a sliding scale. That is an option for therapy. I don't know if everyone always knows that, but that means that I do not make a whole lot of money, so I have a reduced fee for that, which I'm super grateful for and I really appreciate. But that also makes it difficult with finding a sub-in therapist during that time, because not everyone is willing to do that. And I've been seeing my therapist, it's actually about 2.5 years now. And, we've talked about how maybe I would maybe take a little bit of a break while they're gone and, kind of, see what happens, because where I was when I first started, I really needed help, and mentally and emotionally, I feel a lot better and I feel a lot stronger. But then I remembered that winter is coming up and I live in Minnesota, and the one thing that has kind of made this all bearable, this pandemic and this civil unrest and everything that we're going through, is being able to see people outside and being able to walk around, for a little bit. And that's all going to be taken away very soon. And that's very depressing, for lack of a better word. And so maybe while I was more confident of like, yeah, I can do this, and maybe I don't have to see you, and maybe we'll be done for a little bit. But maybe that's not the case so much anymore, because I kind of have to look at stuff that's actually happening and being realistic and being prepared for that. And yeah, so that's something that we're currently talking through.
Well, you're just gonna have to come stay in California for a little bit longer and get us over here.
Yeah, something that I've talked about before, but I am furloughed, and I have been furloughed for several months, and that is difficult in a lot of ways. There are people that are full-time workers and, get up and every day and have a purpose. And, some days I just get up and you're like, well, what are we going to do? So yeah, it's a journey. It's a process, just figuring it all out. So it's all weird, but that also means that we all have different emotions and feelings, and responsibilities and commitments. And it's very easy for me to say one thing where it doesn't apply to somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, I feel lucky and grateful that like my work wasn't really too affected by all this. Like maybe for a few weeks in there, I had clients drop off and just wanted to like stay home and ride it out. But I've basically been working the whole time. But even just for me and like the capacity I have for that is different, right? Because there's this like heavy layer of like all of the stressors we're dealing with, on top of like, I talk about very like emotional, difficult situations that people are dealing with. And then like, some of my self-care stuff, I think I can now go back to the gym, but it's like outside. Like I haven't been able to do that. And that was like a big thing for me, just to like take care of myself when I have this job that requires a lot of like me being available and present for clients. And I definitely like, there's the productivity that, I had these ideas at first of like, okay, I'm working a little bit less initially, like I can do more notes and get caught up on documentation, and like that literally never happened. And I think it's for me just having to let go of some of that stuff, and it's like, well, it just is what it is, and if I don't have the space for it, I don't. And
Yeah, I do think that there's a lot of pressure on a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And, maybe I'm assuming and maybe I'm speaking for people, but it seems like there is this one or the other. Like, there are some people that are like, if you don't come out with a new skill or like a new job or like a new project or, a new this, like, you have no excuse because you had all the time in the world and you had the time, then you didn't do it. And then there's people on the other side that are like, the only thing I can accomplish is getting out of bed.
Mm-hmm.
And, the people on this side, well, that's great for them. That's just not possible for every single person. And, the people on this side, like, any victory, no matter how small or big, like, that's a victory, like, we'll take it. And if there are 3 weeks that the only thing that you can do is get out of bed and eat an apple, like, that's okay, because everything is a nightmare. Like, everything is a hellscape, and I hope that people feel okay with being in between, and also knowing that some days you can be very productive and you can clean your whole house and it's great, and some days you can't, and you can also exist in like everything in between, and knowing that there are ways to look for, doing and accomplishing daily tasks that look different, like, maybe you can't cook for your family yourself, and yes, that sucks because, we're all kind of money crunched at this time, but maybe that means that you can order out and support a local business, like, so yes, it may be not ideal and not the way that you thought it was going to be, but there is something that can happen out of that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely try, like, especially with my clients, to just normalize, like, it's okay. Like, you do what you have the capacity for. And, I think the biggest challenge is, like, this isn't something any of us chose. Like, it's different when you quit a job because that's what you need to do or it's what's best for you. And, it's different when you choose to work from home, when this was all, like, forced on us pretty suddenly. And, like, then everything changed, and I think we all are creatures of, like, we need some sort of stability and structure and routine that we expect, and most of us don't do well when, like, that's all thrown out the window, so yeah. And it's not a normal that I'm really like happy about, but this is where we are.
And I know, I've been really reflecting and sitting with this for weeks, because our normal before was now, and maybe saying now we know, or maybe saying obviously, but the normal we had, or is not like the best way of phrasing it, but the normal we had before was not good for a lot of people that look very different than us. And there is more knowledge, there's more of everything that, kind of demonstrates and shows and proves, or, whatever, that shows that. And so I'm hopeful that we will have a new normal after all of this, because, everything is crumbling around us, which, arguably, like, all things considered, is probably not the worst, because while it may have looked very good for some people, it looked the opposite for a lot of other people. And everything is uncomfortable these days. And, yeah, and that's okay. Being uncomfortable and sitting in that is okay, whatever that looks like for you, and is important sometimes, because that's where you learn and that's where you, figure things out. And, maybe this is sort of my segment, kind of whine about it. Maybe we've kind of done that. But I was thinking that I should go to my next one, which is pass the cheese, where I give you a compliment, and you being my older sister, it is fraught with so many things, complimenting you, because there's so much to choose from, and there's also so much behind it all. But, you have always been someone that I've looked up to, and you've always been someone who has been, a very inspirational and aspirational, role model, and in when things are good and when things are bad, you are, in high school growing up, I always felt that I shouldn't say in high school, but, as you were older than me, and, when I look back when I was younger, it's easy to just think of my sister in high school, but for a very long time, I always felt that you were very perfect, and perfect for me was very unachievable. And I was always just like kind of pretty good. But, as we both have gotten older and as our emotional and mental maturity has, kind of become a bigger picture, you are a lot of things, and all of those are great and good.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's funny, like, just the different perspectives of like how, we went through life at the same time in the same house.
Yeah.
But it was just like so different for each of us. And like, even you using that word like perfect, like I definitely felt this like pressure to be perfect, but I never felt like I was. Like I had that feeling of like, I'm good enough. Like I'm good at things, but I'm not like great at anything. I just try really hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like, the results of that were good, but kind of connecting it to like the mental health piece, like I had an untreated anxiety disorder for like my whole growing up, basically. I don't exactly know when it started, but as far back as I can remember, I had fear and anxiety about literally everything.
Yeah.
And it just, obviously I've been in therapy as an adult, kind of starting in my 20s, and putting that kind of perspective on it and realizing like there was this thing I suffered with that if I had gotten help, that maybe would have changed my life earlier on, at least internally. Like you wouldn't externally know by looking at me that I was suffering, but like talking to people I didn't know, talking in class, like situations with friends, like I worried about everything.
Yeah, I can't speak for you, but I can speak for myself. But, practicing before you make a phone call of like, if you're going to order food, you're like, okay, like this is what I want to order, and I want to make sure that they get it right. And, I know that I definitely would have the, before like the teacher is going to, they're calling roll, and you're like, I have to say here, I have to practice how I'm going to say here so it doesn't sound weird,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or like if you have to read the passage in class, I would like read it before, like not listening to what's happening.
Right, because you're just so worried about everything else. And yeah, I can relate. I also had anxiety growing up, still have it to this day. I think for me, like, it comes in stages, and like some days like, you start off the day less anxious, and then you end the day more anxious, and sometimes there's in the middle. Like right before this, I did my therapy call, and then I knew that we had coming up, and I had a cheese plate, and also like, this is my own thing, but I made bacon, and so I was like, well, I want to pour out the bacon grease before it gets like solidified so I could pour it easily into this thing. And then I was like, oh, I'm not going to have time before all of this stuff, and have to make sure I put all the bacon away. And like, it's just all self-imposed, but there's just times that a little weird.
I just did this, I was talking to a new doctor, and I did this new like kind of genetic test, and it like confirmed basically what I already know, but like that I have a genetic predisposition to like anxiety and worry. I was like, okay, so the odds were against me from the start.
Oh yeah. Well, I guess what we can take away from this today is don't be afraid. We're all going through some battle, and a lot of us are anxious about the smallest things, even if it's just having a phone call or a video call with your sister. We can be anxious about it,
Yeah, well, and there's so many big things to be worried about too, but I think like I always try to ground myself back in like what I have control over, and like in my life, in my community, and like trying to do my part to treat others in a kind way, to work with people, to help them have the lives that they want, and feeling like, creating small change that way is what I have control over. And I, when all these problems feel so big and huge, it's like reminding myself of that. And
Yeah, and I think that I've talked about this before on other things, but I think a lot of us have this pressure and this worry about things being perfect or things being right, or all this. And reality is, like, there is no right, there is no perfect, there is no golden star. What works for me, what works for you, like, we're sisters, we grew up in the same house, but what worked for the two of us is totally different. What works for the person who lives next to me is totally different. What works for somebody across the country is totally different. And so don't beat yourself up if somebody's life or somebody's stuff or everything just looks different, because they're not you. And you can be related and it's different. It can still be different from what you need. We're all kind of going through this journey in this life together, and we're all just trying our best. And I think that it's okay if we make mistakes. It's okay if we're very honest about those mistakes. It's okay if we want to hide that and internalize that and work through that with ourselves. You can make that choice for yourself. So don't worry. Somebody with anxiety says, don't worry.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like if to go to the segue you were talking about of like whining about something, if I'll go on a little rant about that, I just wish that we could not have these like divisive conversations. Like, it feels like everything has become like black or white, this or that, you're on the left, you're on the right, and I just like want us to be able to have conversations again as humans and not just assume based on the way that the media has kind of forced these conversations about what's important, and just like getting back to like the issues and what we have in common, because I do believe we have so much more in common with one another than we have as different.
Yeah.
But that we need to kind of tear away these like walls we've been putting ourselves behind, and realizing that all these issues that are happening too are like not as simple as like there's one right answer, right? Like, we can learn from everyone's different ideas and perspectives to try to change things, right? Because I think there's a lot we're seeing that needs to be changed.
Yeah.
But like, we're not going to do that fighting each other. We need to work together, and I just wish that like we had leadership, or just
I think we've said this in every episode, but make sure you register to vote.
Yeah. Yes. But just leadership that valued that, and like was able to what's the word I'm looking for, like promote it
together,
personify that, value it, and I just feel like we're getting in our own way.
Yeah, it does feel that, especially everything is either left or right, when it comes to political stuff. And so many people, it just feels like it's a very much like, oh, well, I'm on this side and you're on that side, and so we cannot agree. And if you get down to it, everyone wants the same things. Everyone wants to feel loved. Everyone wants to feel safe. Everyone wants to have a community. Whether like that might look different to every single person, but the core of what all of that is the same. And the second you talk to somebody different, you can be like, I'm gonna have breakfast, and what breakfast looks like to me will be totally different from somebody who looks the same as me, somebody who looks different than me, somebody who looks like kind of the same but also kind of different. Like, it can even look different from people who live in your own house. Like, the second you talk to somebody different, that just like opens up your whole world. And I think a lot of people are afraid of a lot of things, but like that even in itself is the same. Like, we're all afraid, but the way we express that is different. And so I think if you just kind of get down to kind of like the basics and the facts, and look at something like, simplify the issue is somebody is afraid and they want to feel safe. We can all kind of relate to that. And yes, like, when you get bigger into it, it'll look very different and it'll be more convoluted. But if you just look at that simple thing, yeah, so don't worry and don't be afraid. I don't know. I don't know does there have to be a lesson? I don't know. But
I mean,
maybe just keep that in mind when you're talking to somebody that you disagree with.
well, yeah, I mean, I think because things are so stressful, we have this, like, we want there to be these sort of like bows we can wrap things up in.
Right.
But I just think even just approaching stuff with like curiosity versus like judgment can make a huge difference. And
Yeah.
like trying to understand, like we have family members that think very differently than we do. Like, so trying to understand their like version of the world and what's important to them and where they're coming from, and not just even assuming that we know what they think or why they think it.
Right. And I also think that we think that there's always one right answer all the time that's going to work 100% of the time. And the reality is that that's not the case. Like, it might work for a while, but then we might have to change it. And that change is okay. Like, being okay with that, Yeah, I mean, just not, as somebody who can be very rigid in their thinking, be more flexible, like we all can be like very rigid, and we're like, well, this worked for me before, so it has to work again. And that's not always the case, like it's not.
Right. And I think this like pandemic and everything, it's changed what normal is going to look like and what we all want out of life. And I think there's a lot of silver linings to be found. Like good things are happening in the midst of all the bad things. And that maybe this pace of life that's slower, that's less polluting of our environment, like that's something that we can try to carry forward.
Yeah, I mean, there are small ways that you can change your life that we're all kind of learning. Like, you can walk to the grocery store, you can take the bus, you can bike, like you can work from home a couple days a week, like, again, what works for some does not work for all. And it doesn't have to be like an end all, this is the only solution kind of thing. It can change with whatever your needs are. But I do want to wrap this up. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you for sitting down with us. Is there any place that you want people to look at what you're doing or find you, or, is there anything that you want to promote?
I mean, I am on social media. You can find me under my name, Victoria Roar, or on Instagram, Roaring Women. Yeah, and that's what I got.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Love you. Thank you.
Bye. Love you too.